Okay, good evening, everybody. Or better yet, I'm talking about good evening. Child, it's still afternoon. What's going on? Listen, I was getting into these receipts and I said, let me pop on this live immediately. So y'all, okay, y'all know how I am. Y'all know how I am. I don't really care about like the headlines and stuff. I don't care about these memes, although half of them are super funny. I don't care about that. What I care about is I care about the receipts. I have been sitting online today and I started seeing a lot of discussion about the UFC, right? Now, mind y'all, I showed y'all some stuff on this channel before. What I showed y'all a couple months ago. And I was like, that's some real interesting posture. Y'all can go in my shorts and y'all see. I said some real interesting posture about the little relationship I was starting to see, entanglement, if you will, with the government and the UFC, right? And now they're starting to talk about UFC being used for diplomacy. Diplomacy, you talking about this direct combat based sport? Combat is what we're gonna use as a like diplomacy sport. So I said we gotta start having some conversations. So I said let me jump right immediately on live. Let me jump immediately online because honestly, I thought it was just a lot of cap. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was a little bit of satire. I thought that people were just talking, you know what I'm saying? Putting 10 on 20, maybe 50, on it or whatever. But the more I'm digging into this, I found actual articles that are being somewhat verified from multiple places that suggest, in fact, there are memorandums of agreement being put into place. I'm gonna start to read to y'all some of the article, but I was like, let me talk to my people because like I really thought this was some internet nonsense. So I put my glasses on so I can read the screen because once again, y'all know me, I need these glasses, okay? I'm gonna be looking at stuff and read stuff. I'm gonna need these glasses. But I found reporting and the State Department announcements indicating that they were signing ceremonies involving UFC and the State Department, right? So it's not about whether the ceremony is actually happening at this point. That's not even what the question is. What I'm interested in is what exactly was signed and like what does it actually mean? I want to see the memorandum of agreement at this point. That's what I want to see. They said it was gonna be signed this week, right? Okay. I don't know if they signed it yet, but I want to know what exactly did the government agree to? Like what is this relationship going to be about? That's what I'm more interested in. So I'm opening this up because I'm hoping y'all got some comments too. Cause y'all it can't just be me who was thinking this was odd. It cannot be me. I saw a lot of discussion starting to happen on a couple of different platforms. I'm like, we need to talk about this. So I got a couple ground rules for the chat and this whole little setup, right? Today, we not about to be fighting about politics, political parties, none of that type of stuff. We're not going to be trying to verbally attack people. Like we got to lay ground rules, like we doing a fight or something up in here. But like, no, we're not going to be attacking people. We're going to talk about. We're literally just here to talk about policy, like the government partnership and this public information, because uh, like what is happening? Like what is actually happening? Like this is really wild work. And I got a couple receipts, so I'm gonna bring you the receipts I got. I'm gonna read a couple things I found online, but I don't know. To me, this is some really wild work. Cause you gotta think about as far as like diplomacy, I don't know that I would have picked a combat sport like mixed martial arts as the foundation for building your diplomatic relationships, right? They're trying to build relationships with other countries. I don't know that this is the thing I would have picked as the vehicle to carry that out, right? Because they have been quite assertive and aggressive in their actions with regards to the things that I have been seeing online, right? Like, we even think about the current negotiations and things that are going on right now. They've kind of been taking a very interesting, aggressive approach. So it's just interesting that they would even, in the middle of what's happening with those negotiations, say, hey, we're going to do this thing with UFC, right? Now, let's see. I see a comment on here. Mm, well, if you're not certain of what's happening with the live, stay tuned and I'm going to show you the receipts. So, as I was saying with regards to like the receipts, this is very interesting. Like, this is very, very interesting. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it, get some of your thoughts. So, um, here's what we know. Once I say I'm gonna keep my glasses on so I can read the screen. The State Department announced a signing ceremony. So that sounds pretty official, right? They announced a signing ceremony. UFC is involved. The term sport diplomacy is being used, which is very specific language, right? That's very specific language. And we have numerous news organizations that are reporting on it. What I'm gonna read in a couple of seconds is from Washington Post, which is pretty credible in general. So that made me ask more questions. I was like, I want to find. I was looking for the MOA, right? I was looking for it, or better yet, even like the MOU, right? I was looking for the MOU in particular, to see what's on there, because generally we could find that kind of information, and it's just I want to know what exactly did we sign and agree to. So let's see. With that being said, I want to know exactly what we signed and agreed to. We're not gonna get all that information right now because once again, I've acknowledged it's not really as forthcoming at the present moment. So, like the full agreement text, we don't have that. The deliverables, of course, we don't have that. Cost of how much all the stuff is gonna cost, we don't know that. Duration, metrics, stuff like that. I'm front load. We don't have that. I don't know that information, right? But I guess it's just interesting when you think about like sports diplomacy, right? That particular phrasing, you usually think of like the Olympics, right? We got stuff going on right now, right? You think soccer, you think basketball, you think ping pong, right? So I guess it made me kind of wonder just about the mechanics of it, right? Like, how did UFC kind of enter this discussion? It doesn't quite align with the way you would perceive those particular kinds of sports, right? We're never going to deny the fact it's a sport, absolutely your sport, very competitive sport, good sport, what have you. However, with regards to the idea of diplomacy and using it as a tool to interact with other foreign nations and bodies, it really just sounds really interesting. Now, I see a comment, sports, as in athletic sports. Thank you. Um, that just made me so interested, right? Because they have been laying down foundation. I've been talking about that on this channel periodically as I see things like there's posturing, right? We saw a few months ago when we saw them sitting outside the UFC and they were talking about it. We saw some other posturing because we know there's a whole separate event and thing going on for this 250 event, right? To celebrate 250 years of the nation. There's going to be something that's happening, and there's a partnership relationship going on with that, right? So it just really makes me wonder what is actually in this contract, right? Because it's very interesting. Like, why'd you pick UFC? Like, there are also other sports that exist that are out there. Like, why'd you pick the UFC in particular? And we're also not going to pretend like that's the only mixed martial arts agency or programming out there, right? So it's just interesting you pick UFC. Like, why that particular sport, right? There's a high level of aggression associated with UFC, right? It's a high level of aggression. And you're saying you want to use this for diplomacy, right? You're using this as almost like a social form of like lubricant, and like you're trying to interact with these other countries. Like you have this, let's say, social situation, this bonding kind of experience, this vehicle, this tool that you're using. But this particular sport is associated with high levels of aggression, right? It's peculiar, if nothing else, right? It's very, very peculiar. And it just made me ask, could they have used another sport, another vehicle to be a little bit more effective? And like once again, we're actually sitting in a very unprecedented time frame, right? Like there's a whole conversation of war, whole conversation of being actively in negotiations, whole conversation of ceasefire, and the particular vehicle that you all thought was the most conducive to getting us the best result was the probably the most aggressive one that you could pick, like based off of just aesthetics of how it even looks. Like generally, it's highly aggressive, right? So, not to say that people aren't using technique forms and having lots of discipline in what they're doing, but it's generally highly aggressive, right? Is it not? Early a few months ago, they were talking about you and using UFC fighters to train officers and like military personnel, right? Then they switched over a couple sometime later. Now they're talking about having there be the cage fight for the 250th event, right? And then thank you. And then now we're talking about memorandums of understanding for diplomacy. Like that's a high level of investment and engagement. And it's just once again, like I said, it just makes me wonder, could basketball have not like accomplished some of the same exact things? Could like education exchange accomplish like some of the same things? Especially because we're talking about adjustments and things that have been happening with regards to like who's where doing what, right? Could could there not have been another vehicle that would have made maybe more sense if we're talking about diplomacy, right? Because we just learned earlier this year that we're losing access to certain um medical professionals, right? Work whether it's like research or like the actual like medical doctors and stuff, more particular, but both. But I'm thinking about the medical doctors who were trained here being told like, hey, they're going to have to leave because X, Y, and Z is occurring, right? So that's why when I said the medical exchange, like the fact like that, right? Could there not have been just a more palatable like option that could have done the same exact thing? That's my question, right? Like what message is being sent? Last year, at the end of last year, they started using term like instead of Department of Defense, we had Department of War. That's a posturing kind of conversation, right? That's a posturing kind of conversation. Then it switches to we want military staff to be trained by UFC. Okay. Then it's switching to celebrate 250 years of being a nation. Now they're saying, hey, um, we're gonna have people fight. Presumably, 4th of July time frame, right? Very hot. People are literally gonna be glazed up like donuts, sitting there fighting. Because you normally think about like if you go to the kind of fights and things like normally you see people they're usually inside, not all the time, but normally with these professional events, they're inside a building, there's cooling going on. It's not super hot in there. It's somewhat controlled temperature wise, right? Um, you're gonna have people fighting in the sweltering heat as a way of commemorating the resilience of like of the nation or the history and legacy of that's like what you felt was appropriate. It just seems odd, and it's going to be very expensive to do, right? They haven't even give us the full set of numbers for that, although as taxpayers we pay for it. So I just feel like that's really peculiar. And it's once again, it's really big on posturing because while is all that happening with this same exact specific agency, right? This particular group, right? So that's so interesting. So then it makes me just once again kind of come back to the accountability part. So, like, show us the MOU at this point. I don't like to get caught up too much in like headlines. I don't care nothing about that. Um, I want to see the MOU. I want to know what terms are being listed out. Like, what are the conditions? Like, how long is this going to be lasting? When I think of diplomacy, I'm not thinking of something that you're building and just dropping off. You think of things that you build to last. So what all is being written inside of here? What are we actually buying into? What are we agreeing to? Because we can certainly see the posturing of all of this is showing us that they want to have a very strong relationship and connection to this particular agency, these particular types of